our advanced exercise prescription, we're going to be discussing the game of golf. There's a lot that goes into a golf swing. Multiple joints, multiple movements, multiple muscles, multiple directions in some cases, and a lot of rotation. Each type of swing, depending on where your ball is in distance and correlation to the hole, will impact the type of swing that you do. For example, I'm going to show you the putting to begin with. It's a shorter movement, but very important that it has control. Some of the larger movements can become a little bit more complex, but as you notice, my feet kind of stayed stationary, and everything above the waist was really doing most of the work. For a pitching wedge, the position of my feet makes a very, very large impact on the end result of where the ball goes. There's a lot of break in my wrist, and that really does make a big difference depending on where your placement is at. So for a pitching wedge, you're going to have a little bit different stroke, a little bit larger stroke. And now I'm going to show you something for a long distance. This is a driver, and the swing itself is rather large. There are lots of different varieties of swings for driving. I'm going to show you my version. Of course, it's always very important to make sure to get a good warm-up in. I've already done some good calisthenics and a nice little 10-minute walk, jog to kind of warm up the body. Now it's time for a little bit more intense of a warm-up, something a little bit more focused to the movement that we're going to be doing. I'm going to start out with windmills. Now, the important thing about windmills is that it's a bilateral movement and it's transverse, and so we're making sure to balance out the body. The unfortunate thing about golf is when you play with only one side, you end up having more dominance issues on one side than the other. So just trying to make sure to balance out the body a little bit more and to make sure that we have an increased range of motion so that we can further the distance whenever we're trying to make a really big impact on the ball and send it a little bit further. So the more that you have for that wind up, that backswing, the more you can increase that distance. Arm circles are extremely beneficial in helping to open up those shoulders prior to actually swinging the golf club. What we're wanting to do is make sure that the body is prepared for internal, external rotation, elevation, and depression of those shoulders. So if we can open them up with a few arm circles, it's really going to help our game. Prone planks are typically an isometric exercise, but I want to get a little bit more out of the movement itself, not only engaging the rectus abdominis, the pelvic floors, but I also want to make sure that we're getting the quadratus lumborum, we're getting those sides of the body, those side bodies to engage a little bit more. So we're going to do some side planking and add in some lower body components and create a star. So this particular plank is not so much about the isometrics, yes, that's a part of it, but it really is about incorporating a little bit more of the core, the shoulder stabilization, and the lower body stabilization. Kneeling rotations are very beneficial at helping to wake up the core musculature. The pelvic floors, the transverse abdominis, the internal and external obliques. It's actually helping to wake up the erector spinae quite a bit as well because of that rotational movement. They're very nice to help to wake up that part of the body so that we're really prepared for the golf swing itself. That rotation is so critical for a good golf swing, and so I want to make sure both sides are balanced. So not only am I going to do the left side, but I'm also going to do the right side. I want to show you that my knees are separated and they're a little bit more than hip width apart. My feet are actually pressed together. So I've got like a little bit of a triangle happening here with the base of my body, okay? As I'm here, my abs are engaged, my hips are kind of pushed forward because I'm squeezing my glutes and pushing my feet together. My inner thighs are actually working very on point as well, just to keep everything nice and stable, so those adductors are engaged. I'm going to make sure that my shoulders are rolled back and down. My left arm is going to be my lead arm. My right arm is going to be my helper arm. And this movement is very small, okay? I am going to go in full range of motion on both sides, but I'm going to start out with my handle right in front of my my belly button, my umbilicus, because that's the direction that I want to make sure everything's kind of facing. My hips are going to stay pointed forward like I've got headlights on them, and they're not going to rotate at all, they're not going to move, but really the movement is coming from the small portion of the midsection. So lead arm, hand's going to help on this side with the right side, and we're just going to go from the belly button to the outside of the hip. It's a small movement. Now if I wanted to increase the range of motion and add a little bit more resistance, I'd use both handles. Make this a little bit tighter in through here. And again, I am making sure that my handle is following my belly button. The back side of the body tends to be a little bit more neglected. So this next actual exercise is going to be incorporating I's, Y's, W's, T's. It's also going to be in conjunction with a squat. So we're getting a little bit more out of each exercise by adding in both the lower and the upper body and really engaging that posterior chain. I'll lift my toes up so that you can see we're getting a little bit more hamstring engagement and really focusing on the back side of the body to get a little bit more extension. Exercise is designed to mimic the golf swing itself. It incorporates a lot of transverse movement. We're using the lower body and the upper body. There's a lot of stabilization with the shoulders. The core is very active. And on top of that, we're really opening up the hips. In this movement, I'll be using a TheraBand, and you can see how that kind of helps to add a little bit more to the movement, just having that additional resistance. Taught this exercise is being called a lawnmower. It's really like a unilateral Romanian deadlift with a high knee and a one-armed row. It's a nice kind of catch-all, gets almost every joint, and we're really focusing a lot on the posterior chain. This next exercise is a lot of fun. I call it Spider-Man. It's a lateral lunge incorporated with a hop, and you're trying to kind of stabilize against the resistance of a TheraBand tube. At the end of the day, there have been so many body parts that have been worked out. It's very important to have a cool down process, and I really like to add in a little bit of yoga towards the end, a little bit of longer static stretching, really focusing on getting those areas of the body that have been working really hard. So for this portion of it, we're going to do downward dog and a little bit of child's pose. During all of these golf-focused exercises, those hips have really been doing a lot of work. So I want to make sure to get them nice and stretched out at the end of the workout. So we're going to do a little bit of a variation on warrior's pose. if you are excited about it and want to try it on your own, enjoy.